What's up, everyone? Welcome to another amazing episode of the Boundless Media Podcast with the amazing title of Boundless. Well, I totally forgot, guys. It's well, that's how we're doing today because we're so focused on lead generation. The
Boundless Businesses
Businesses.
podcast.
There we go.
Yeah.
I should just roll that up into a nice little soundtrack thing. But anyway, thank you guys so much for checking us out today. We have a very interesting topic. And as always, if you need any help with outbound marketing or thinking about how to do personalized outbound, where to get the best data, or anything related to that, look no further than our new beautiful website of getboundlessmedia.com. Justine, what are we talking about today?
Today, we're going to dive into data. So we're going to go over some different use cases, and tell people how we would find, analyze, and optimize data for those various niches. So it'll be really good, really useful, some, practical tips for how to get this data.
Absolutely. And we have three different niches that we're going to be discussing today. We're going to go through analyzing where the best people are, what platforms we would use, and how we would get that data into action. So this might not be 100% relevant for your niche, but take it as a learning experience on the strategies behind identifying data and then using that data. So Justine, what's our first niche?
So our first niche is luxury e-commerce brands. If that's where you want to start.
Larissa, do you want to start? Just because as many of you know, I am not a luxury e-com shopper. So turn it
Well,
over.
to be fair, neither am I. However, there's a couple ways that I would probably do this. First, I would start by looking at like the original website itself. If you have a website, especially that you're like paying PPC and SEO ads on, let's say you have like a decent ad spend. Most of the time for luxury e-com project for luxury e-com products, like there's going to be some ad spend behind that driving people to your site. So as you think about data, it's important to kind of consider like the cost that sort of goes along with it. Like none of the data we're going to talk about is necessarily free. It's all going to take either time or some money invested, right? And possibly both. So for a luxury ecom brand, because you probably already have like decent web traffic because you're spending on PPC and SEO and maybe even social ads driving people to your site, that's where I would probably start. So assuming you have good web traffic, I would start on the site and start getting data from that site directly. That will help you basically be able to qualify people because they're already interested in you.
Yeah, absolutely. So on top of that, I might do a completely different thing where I would find out if I sell luxury e-com items, right? Who is actually buying those? For instance, like is it mothers in New Jersey, or is it tweens in Beverly Hills, right? Then we figure out who those individuals follow, and there's a reason behind it because I want to understand a little bit more on like what specific items make sense for that niche, right? Then from there, I want to see who they follow in regards to influencers and brands, because you can actually scrape people's followers on Instagram and all these other platforms and figure out who is a commonality between 5, 10, 15, 20. From there, you can see what items they promote and then start being able to build a much more like overview on like the brands that makes sense, right, for that niche, right? So that's one way to actually use social too. And then it's old school, but trade shows, you could actually go to trade shows and understand like, oh, everyone's talking about this new type of lip balm, or maybe the new hot thing like a couple years ago is quinoa. So every like luxury food brand was using quinoa in it, and you can use that ingredient or that brand or that person, whatever, as the stage to find more individuals like that. So kind of a social one, and then old school trade show.
So that's 3 different strategies for getting good data for a luxury e-com brand. What's next, Jesse?
Well, before we move on, let's talk about what to do with that, because it's great we have data, but if it just sits in a
Fair.
spreadsheet, like that doesn't really do too much. So once you have this data, you got to understand like where is the best place who you're targeting specifically for this ecom brand, and then how your offer makes sense to get over to them. So let's say that you're going over and you want to reach out to the um the brand director or marketing ops person, or maybe operations itself, right? You got to figure that out and then see, oh, if they're posting every single day on Instagram or Twitter, then or LinkedIn, maybe the social campaign makes a lot more sense to connect with them there versus like an email one. Like let's say they're not there, but they have their email in their bio or whatever, and they're like, hey, DM with any questions, then or email with any questions, then you can reach out to them on email. So once you have this data, you want to figure out who you're going to target at that company and what the offer is going to be. Like for instance, you user generated content, so UGC brand, creators right now are reaching out to a lot of ecom brands to do videos for. So if you're reaching out to a luxury brand, for instance, you could, I don't know, and you had that product, for instance, like actually making them a video before and showing what you can do, or showing past work, or saying, hey, I saw that you had this video and it did the best last month. Like this is what I could do to improve upon it. Maybe the brand's really big on diversity, and you know that all their video content on TikTok, for instance, is one demographic or one socioeconomic group. You can actually bring that up. So whatever your offer is, like, you're gonna have to customize it, but actually take that data and do something with it. I see a lot of people get amazing lists and they're the best of the best, but it doesn't really mean anything unless you can actually reach out to those people. Great.
Yes, definitely. So our next niche is SAS Leaders. So any SAS products.
Or so you and I have
You're the expert here. You should start here.
Yeah, so SAS is very interesting because there are actually built a campaign for brand new SaaS founders the other day, and that was targeting people on like Product Hunt. And for those who don't know what Product Hunt is, it basically releases 10 to 20 new SaaS, mostly SaaS based companies or SaaS based like solutions every day, where you can say, hey, this SaaS helps you manage your time better or whatever. So you could actually like find these type of groups and directories and then have a whole campaign dedicated to referencing like they were just featured on Product Hunt. Or the standard one is like if they're hiring or they're raising money, that's fine. Another great one is podcasts. So actually going into listenernote.com, looking up like SaaS founder podcast, and then scraping the guests off of that, putting those people into then sales nav or whatever database you use to then find that person. And again, you have some custom points that you could bring up when reaching out to them, because you can say, I listen to your podcast, or I love point A about that podcast. So two really great ideas is using online directories like Product Hunt, and the second one is using something like a podcast or something that's outwardly expressing that, if there's a podcast about B2B SaaS founders who immigrated to the US podcast, right? Super specific. So anyone on that list, you can pretty much assume is an immigrant of a SaaS company focused on B2B. So it really helps you on qualifying there. Larissa, did you have anything else that really could work for SaaS before we talk about strategy and reaching out?
Yeah, so one really big thing that like I personally, as I've been scraping data, have been utilizing has been LinkedIn groups. So a lot of these things you can find like really specific groups to be able to target. And if you have Sales Navigator, you can go ahead and just like plug those in. And like as you're building lists, you can just plug the kind of group name into Sales Nav. And it's like a super good filter because people like basically, again, if they're in this group, let's say they're in this group for SaaS founders or and really like there's all kinds of different ways that you can kind of slice up this data, and you can use groups to I don't know, have people kind of self-qualify themselves. And then I usually add like additional filters for like activity and things, but LinkedIn groups are super useful and can help you get to like really niche areas while also like filtering out all of your other titles and everything else.
Yeah, I think another great example of groups is thinking about there's a lot of Discord channels and stuff like that. And it's a little harder to scrape, but that is a way to do it. I know a brand, they are a really successful tech company focused on development. And one thing that they do is Reddit. They 100% of their marketing goes to Reddit outbound and content creation on Reddit. So very interesting to see how the world's going there. But now that you have that data, you have to figure out how to reach out to these individuals. Like I said, two ways that we focus on is email, right? Custom email outbound or custom social outbound. So, like I said, if they came from Discord or Reddit, then focus on that. I did an experiment with Twitter the other day, focused on more SaaS founders, and that worked swimmingly. To actually get people to respond, and just because it's a different medium that doesn't get as crowded. But again, you have to think about target, offer, message, and then appointment setting, sales. So you can have amazing lists, but your offer needs to make sense to that niche. Then you have to figure out what message they actually care about. Like very few people want an email of like 16 paragraphs. Like just get to the point, right? So, but do it in a respectful way and really focus on selling, especially that SaaS founders, the outcome. Like why even have the conversation? Like one of my campaigns I literally was doing right before this, I was saying, hey, I can get you 20 more calls from your web traffic, open to chatting. And when they respond, the phone number, I give them a call. If they don't, then I send them a custom Loom where I have a template and I customize the actual website that I'm referencing to them. And it just makes it much more personal. It takes less than 30 seconds to make something like this. So it doesn't have to take a ton of time, but your offer needs to matter to that specific niche. And you have to develop messaging that actually resonates, especially with SaaS, because they are getting bombarded every single day and twice on Sundays.
Yeah, the only thing that you mentioned, but I would like to just really emphasize is really important, is that custom piece. So one thing as you're scraping data for pretty much any niche, it's really helpful to think of like, how can you, as you're scraping data, get custom points that you can later reference in your messaging. So that makes it a lot easier to go through and like write, let's say, custom emails or social messages or whatever. Because if you're scraping those custom points as you go, then you have a whole database basically to work with of like, okay, here's something that makes this completely customized to this person. I couldn't send it to anybody else and have this actually make any sense. But you can do it at scale that way. So if you can include those custom points in your data scraping, it will go really far.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Guys, this is fun. I'm kind of sad we're on one of the last ones. So we might have to do a bonus one, to be honest.
Yeah, that'd be fun. The last one I have is consultant.
Larissa, you know the consulting world a little better than I, but what would you do?
Consultants are hard because a big thing you want to keep in mind as you're putting together data and targeting is like purchasing power, right? Like that's a really big piece. So, and it also depends, like there's so many different like niches within consultants. So that varies a lot as well, but you want to make sure that like the people you're reaching out to actually have authority to make any sort of decision, especially if this is an outbound to eventually lead into a sales call. If you're reaching out to, let's say, a junior consultant at Ernst & Young, it doesn't matter. Like there's literally no point. They can't do anything and they have zero purchasing power. They're not even like at the top of the rung for any clients that they're working on. Like they're really just like assisting other consultants. Eventually they'll be like more senior type consultants, but I would say like really focus on that seniority. In terms of where to get that data, LinkedIn is a really good place to get that data. Otherwise, like kind of like we mentioned before, a lot of just like online discussion type forums is really good. I mean, it's going to vary a lot. So like my background is really in health benefits consulting. That is very different than, let's say, if you were doing like operational consulting. So the ways you would reach out to these people differs a lot depending on kind of like the area of consulting that they specialize in. But I would say, like, to kind of paint with a little bit of a broad brush, like really look for those forums or groups or anything really where like they're getting together to discuss like common problems. And then that also gives you, again, a good custom point to be able to go and say like, okay, they mentioned this particular issue that like maybe their clients are facing. Because most of the time, if you're targeting consultants, it's not actually for the consultant. It's probably for who the consultant works with. In some cases, it might be for the consultant themselves, but oftentimes it's going to be like, you want to put yourself in front of this consultant so that their clients might be interested in working with you. So oftentimes people use consultants as kind of like a mediary because their client base matches, let's say, your client base, your ideal client base, and going in with a consultant is somebody that they trust and can have a little bit of like, I don't know, just a little bit of like authority and like help push your product essentially a little bit easier. Although it doesn't always work. Consultants are hard to reach too. It just kind of depends on like where they're specialized. So hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, and there's other places out there. So depending on the consultant themselves, let's say they're a specific technology consultant or like, I don't know, like Shopify consultant or something like that. There are places where there are directories for that, but also there's ways and databases like People Per Hour, or places where you can actually hire consultants on an hourly basis or something like that. There's a lot of them out there. Like for marketing, a huge one is Marketing Hire, right? But you can actually find consultants on there, and they're very thorough with who they want to go after or who they help serve the most. So that might be a great place to actually start to get the initial ball rolling when it comes to finding people. And after that, like, you'll notice, like, if you go to LinkedIn, what groups are associated with and whatnot. But like Larissa saying, like, at the end of the day, once you have that person, you need to be very sure you have a compelling offer to them, because it's a huge thing right now in the Facebook marketing game, where everyone's like, I can help Facebook, or I can help coaches and consultants do XYZ, which is great, but it's getting very saturated. So either you have to use a unique mechanism, like if everyone's saying Facebook ads, then you say TikTok ads or LinkedIn ads or something like that. So it really depends on like what your offer is, on the type of like medium that would make sense, right? So like most in the business world at least, or that you want to reach, are probably not hanging out on Facebook as much, or Instagram, or might be unprofessional to reach them on those mediums. Twitter might be different, right? Especially with all the buzz generated by Musk. So you just have to really be careful on like where you reach them and what you're offering them, because you could get drowned out by the noise quite easy. So for outbound, like, data is great, but like the outbound for consultants is a little hard. So basically
Are podcasts something you could use in, reaching out to consultants or even finding consultants? Because I feel like they're on podcasts a lot, but I don't know. I could be wrong there.
I mean, there are strategies to like invite consultants to your own podcast, or you could use podcasts as a database for it. I don't know. There's sales and then there's marketing, right? If you're going to use podcasts for a sales mechanism, like, unless it's really dialed in, where like I bring on someone for 15 minutes and then we have a 45-minute discussion about something that's bothering them, that's harder to do, at least like from my perspective. But also on the same note, like, yes, you could use, if there's a Oracle, right, NetSuite podcast, and they bring in consultants to share what's happening, or even actually podcasts are might work, but events, like, consultants often speak at like industry events. That might be a phenomenal one, where you can like scrape the speaker list, and like fireside chats, and it doesn't have to be like the main stage. There are often like consultants that will be there. I was scraping a list for like roofing pros, and there were like marketing agencies that only sell to roofing pros. So like If you look for like niche agencies and that's your target, then maybe conferences could be good. So you could just go to the exhibitor list and stuff like that.
So that was my last niche. Did we want to do an extra one, or should we make that into a different episode?
Yeah, I think let's hear feedback from everyone on these. Maybe next time we can solicit ideas from people themselves and make this a lot more like custom. Like, this is Jerry, and Jerry has a this type of company to do XYZ. So maybe we'll have to like do this again, because I mean I had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any closing remarks, team?
I would just say, in regards to data, again, you want to make sure you're getting customizable points, and you want to make sure that you are qualifying your data. There is nothing that can ruin your marketing quicker than bad data. So make sure that what you're doing is producing high quality data. If you're planning on, let's say, reaching out to people on Twitter, don't reach out to people on Twitter that haven't posted on Twitter in the last 30 days, right? Because that gives you an indication they're not active on the platform. Look for those types of indications as you're scraping data, so that the rest of your marketing is not set up to fail.
Yeah, great point. And if you need any more help, or like I said, our new website's out. So getboundlessmedia.com. Our YouTube channel has now over like 200 videos around marketing, lead gen, and outbound specific. So really excited to start sharing that content there. And honestly, if you have any questions, Nico at getboundlessmedia.com. Always happy to lend a hand or be a sounding board for you in your journey. So thank you guys so much for listening. Excited to keep this podcast going and continue educating and helping you make more money and get more clients. So have a great rest of your day. Enjoy it, and peace.